From the sky, they look like incense sticks. From the ground, they are homes. But what if they were never meant for the living? The incident was reported as an accident, a fall from a high-rise apartment, a brief headline, a short investigation, a quiet conclusion. Yet within hours, images of the building began circulating online. From above, the structure revealed something unsettling. Its layout did not resemble a residential complex designed for comfort or efficiency. It resembled a ritual object. Long, vertical forms stood in rigid alignment, their proportions eerily similar to ceremonial incense placed before the dead. This was not the first time such questions had emerged, but this time, the public reaction was different. We are conditioned to believe that modern architecture is governed by mathematics, engineering, and profit. Concrete replaces superstition. Glass replaces myth. Cities rise according to zoning laws, not ancient rites. That is what we are told, and for the most part, we accept it. But when a building resembles an offering rather than a shelter, belief begins to fracture. Online forums filled with speculation. Some dismissed the resemblance as coincidence. Others were not so certain. They compared satellite images of multiple developments across different regions. The patterns repeated. 3 towers aligned like incense, courtyards shaped like talismans, central axes pointing toward old temples, abandoned shrines, or symbolic landmarks long forgotten by urban planners, but not by history. The discussion soon moved beyond aesthetics. Traditional Feng Shui was never meant to dominate or exploit. At its core, it sought balance. Water, wind, land, and human presence were meant to coexist in harmony. A home was supposed to protect life, not extract from it. A city was meant to channel vitality, not consume it. So why did these modern structures feel different? According to practitioners and historians, there exists a darker interpretation, one that does not focus on harmony, but on redirection. In this view, human presence itself becomes a resource. Fortune is not created, it is transferred. Energy is not cultivated, it is borrowed. And borrowed energy always demands repayment. The idea is controversial. There is no official recognition, no academic consensus, but the theory persists, passed quietly between generations, rarely written, often warned against. It suggests that when enough people live within a deliberately arranged formation, their collective momentum can be redirected toward a single focal point, a beneficiary, an unseen center of gain. Not everyone living there feels it. Most do not notice anything at all. That is precisely the point. The more subtle the extraction, the longer it can continue. As night falls, these buildings change character. Lights glow in uniform patterns. Vertical lines burn against the darkness. From a distance, they no longer resemble homes filled with individual lives. They resemble something ceremonial, something active. Candles do not need to move to burn. At this stage, we are not dealing with proof. We are dealing with alignment. Visual, symbolic, historical alignment. And alignment has always been the language of power. The question is no longer whether these similarities are accidental. The question is simpler and far more disturbing. Who benefits when a city is designed like a ritual? And more importantly, who pays the price? And this was only the surface layer. If this story resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel so that our future investigations can continue to illuminate the truths that often remain hidden behind the entertainment industry's brightest lights. Share this video across every platform where voices gather, because collective awareness is the only force capable of demanding accountability. Let us stand together, not in anger, but in clarity and compassion, to ensure that what happened to Yu Minglong is never repeated. Let us raise our voices so that silence can no longer swallow the struggles of those who give so much of themselves to the world. Cities are often described as living organisms. They breathe through traffic. They pulse through power grids. They grow where money flows. But rarely do we ask whether they also consume. To understand why certain modern structures provoke unease, we must step away from aesthetics and into intention. In classical geomancy, form is never accidental. Shape determines flow, alignment determines direction, and repetition determines amplification. When patterns appear once, they may be dismissed. When they appear across regions, developers, and decades, coincidence begins to lose credibility. One of the most debated configurations is the vertical triad. 3 towers, evenly spaced, standing parallel to one another. From the ground, they appear efficient. From the air, they resemble something else entirely. Long, narrow silhouettes rising from a shared base. Their proportions are strikingly similar to ceremonial incense sticks placed before ancestral altars. Incense, in ritual symbolism, is not decoration. It is communication. Smoke rises. Intent follows. What matters is not the object itself, but what it directs upward. In traditional belief systems, incense is offered to honor, to ask, or to appease. It is never burned without purpose. So, what does it mean when thousands of people live inside a form that mirrors an offering? Supporters of the coincidence theory argue that high-rise clustering is simply a response to land scarcity. And in many cases, that is true. But this explanation fails when the surrounding space does not demand such compression. It fails when the spacing between towers is too precise, when central courtyards align with symbolic axes, when entrances face locations with no commercial or logistical advantage, but immense historical or spiritual significance. Another configuration raises even deeper concern: ground plans that resemble talismans, angular layouts with protrusions and voids arranged in ways that serve no structural purpose. From above, these complexes mirror symbols commonly associated with sealing, binding, or containment. Residents rarely see this perspective. They experience the building horizontally: hallways, elevators, balconies. Daily routines fragment the whole into harmless parts. But power is never distributed in fragments. It operates in totality. According to those who study forbidden geomantic traditions, such designs are not meant to affect individuals. They are meant to affect accumulation. The more lives pass through the structure, the stronger the field becomes. Each routine action reinforces the pattern. Each night of sleep deepens the imprint. This is where the concept of borrowed fortune emerges. Borrowed fortune does not destroy its source immediately. That would attract attention. Instead, it erodes subtly. Minor illnesses, persistent fatigue, unexplained stagnation. Families work harder, yet advance slower. Nothing dramatic enough to alarm authorities. Nothing measurable enough to be proven. Yet the beneficiary prospers. Developers involved in such projects often deflect suspicion by invoking science and modernity. Publicly, they dismiss superstition. Privately, they consult advisors whose names never appear on blueprints. In this contradiction lies the truth. Those who truly believe something is powerless never bother to deny it. Night reveals what daylight conceals. When illuminated, these buildings transform. Windows align into vertical columns of light. Courtyards glow like sigils activated by electricity. From a distance, entire districts resemble ritual arrays rather than neighborhoods. Not abandoned, not decayed, active. The most unsettling realization is this: none of it requires belief to function. Ritual does not depend on faith from the offering, only from the designer. And if architecture can be used to redirect fortune, then a far more dangerous question follows. If buildings can drain energy from those who live within them, what happens when an entire capital is aligned? If buildings could drain fortune, what happens when an entire capital is aligned? Throughout history, the fall of power has rarely begun with rebellion. It begins with imbalance. In classical cosmology, heaven observes, earth reacts, humanity follows. When authority aligns with order, the sky remains silent and the land remains stable. But when power overreaches, the first warnings do not arrive in the form of protests or coups. They arrive as anomalies, signs that do not accuse, but do not lie. Reports of unusual celestial phenomena began quietly. A sun that appeared darker than it should have been, its color distorted, its light heavy, tinged with red. Atmospheric explanations were offered, as they always are. Dust, pollution, refraction, each explanation reasonable on its own, less convincing in sequence. Then came the second anomaly: multiple suns appearing simultaneously. Optical illusions, scientists argued. ice crystals in the upper atmosphere. Rare, but documented. Yet ancient records describe the same event in far less technical language. When more than one sun appears in the sky, the chronicles warn of divided authority, power fractured, mandate weakened. In those records, such phenomena preceded upheaval. What followed was more difficult to dismiss. The sky itself appeared split, one half dark, one half pale, a visible division that lingered longer than any passing cloud formation. In traditional interpretation, this was known as a sign of separation, a warning that unity had been lost long before conflict became visible. If heaven was signaling withdrawal, Earth soon answered. Across multiple regions, water sources long considered dormant began to stir. Wells unused for decades surged back to life. Springs erupted with unusual force. In some areas, the water emerged warm, agitated, releasing bubbles as if something beneath the surface was struggling to escape. Geologists point to shifts in underground pressure, changes in water tables, natural precursors to seismic activity. These explanations are accurate, but accuracy does not erase meaning. Before major earthquakes in the past, similar signs were recorded. Water rose, heat increased, the ground prepared itself. Then came fire, flames bursting from soil where crops once grew, sustained combustion without an obvious external fuel source. Attempts to extinguish it failed repeatedly. The fire fed itself from below, as though the earth had become a conduit rather than a barrier. From a scientific perspective, this suggests gas release, methane, chemical ignition. From a symbolic perspective, it suggests something older, the release of suppressed force. When water and fire emerge together, it signals collapse of balance. Historical parallels are difficult to ignore. In previous eras, the death of dominant leaders coincided with earthquakes, celestial anomalies, and unexplained atmospheric events. Whether coincidence or correlation, the pattern repeats with unsettling consistency. The most disturbing moment, however, did not occur in the sky or beneath the ground. It occurred at the surface. A large body of water, long considered stable, suddenly surged without warning. No storm, no wind, no external trigger. Waves rose and struck the embankments as though responding to a command no one could hear. Records show this phenomenon occurred only 3 times before. Each time, it coincided with the end of a reign. This time, it happened again. If heaven withdraws its favor and earth destabilizes its foundation, what remains is humanity. And humanity does not remain unchanged. Fear dissolves. Silence breaks. Speech sharpens. Public restraint erodes. The unspoken becomes explicit. When authority senses this shift, it responds with pressure. But pressure applied to a fault line does not restore stability. It accelerates rupture. This is the moment ancient texts warned about. The point at which signs no longer ask for correction. They announce consequence. The most dangerous transformation is not environmental. It is psychological. When people stop believing in permanence, power loses its greatest defense. And once belief collapses, no structure, no ritual, no alignment can hold it together. But the most dangerous change was not in the sky. It was in people. When heaven withdraws and earth destabilizes, humanity does not stand still. It adapts, or it fractures. The most profound change is rarely visible from the outside. It occurs internally, where belief once resided. Fear, long used as an invisible architecture of control, begins to erode. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It cracks quietly, like old stone under constant pressure. When fear weakens, speech hardens. Public discourse shifts from implication to accusation, from coded language to blunt declaration. What was once whispered becomes typed. What was once deleted becomes shared. Authority senses this transformation immediately, not because it listens, but because it feels resistance where compliance once existed. This is what ancient scholars referred to as human change, not rebellion, awareness. In cyclical cosmology, the year governed by fire amplifies everything it touches. Heat does not create new substance. It reveals instability already present. In a fire-dominated cycle, leadership is tested not by opposition, but by exposure. Hidden motives surface. Ethical compromises ignite. Systems built on pressure rather than trust begin to fail from within. Fire does not negotiate. The year ahead has been described as one of extreme contrast. Externally, strength may still be projected. Markets may surge briefly. Institutions may display confidence. But beneath that surface, fractures widen. Financial systems face restructuring not because of collapse, but because they can no longer sustain imbalance. Banks tighten. Liquidity retreats. Stability becomes selective. Those at the top often mistake control for resilience. They believe force can substitute legitimacy. History suggests otherwise. When fire dominates, moral weakness becomes a liability rather than a private flaw. Leaders without restraint provoke resistance without intending to. Organizations built on obedience encounter internal decay. The collapse does not arrive as a single event. It arrives as cumulative exhaustion. At the societal level, fire affects temperament. Patience shortens. Anger ignites faster. Minor disputes escalate disproportionately. Roads become battlegrounds of emotion. Words become weapons. Relationships fracture under pressure. They were never designed to withstand. This is why ancient warnings emphasized restraint over reaction, not as virtue signaling, but as survival strategy. Fire years punish impulsive authority and impulsive obedience alike. The most unsettling prediction is not environmental, economic, or political. It is ethical. As pressure increases, some individuals abandon restraint entirely. Crimes lose boundaries. Acts once considered unthinkable become transactional. Exploitation evolves. Desecration becomes profitable. When reverence disappears, nothing remains sacred enough to protect. This is the final stage of borrowed fortune. What was taken from the many leaves behind emptiness where conscience once stood. And yet, fire does not only destroy, it also clarifies. Those who endure such cycles do not do so by escaping the heat, but by refusing to amplify it. They slow when the world accelerates. They observe when others react. They retain restraint when chaos invites indulgence. This is not withdrawal. It is positioning. History does not collapse without warning. It announces itself repeatedly to those willing to recognize the signs. Power falls fastest when it forgets why it rose. And when the alignment of architecture, ambition, and appetite finally breaks, the reckoning is not supernatural. It is inevitable. History does not repeat. It waits. And when the signs align, it collects its debt.